Hello, Namaste. Welcome to Dev's Hammer Show. Dev's Hammer Show is flagship weekly English talk show of ITV Nepal and Indigenous Television. In this episode, I'm going to produce really special program focusing on the International International Day of World Indigenous Peoples, and on the occasion of 6th anniversary of Indigenous Television. So in order to make this episode special, I have invited a special guest. She is a UN resident coordinator in Nepal. She supports being head of the UN in Nepal. She supports the UN country team in advancement of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals and many other UN-focused or priority agendas of UN. But in this episode, I will focus our discussion around the theme of this year's International Day of World's Indigenous Peoples, which is the theme is leaving no one behind. Indigenous peoples and the call for a new social contract. First of all, before I begin our discussion, first of all, I would like to welcome you to the show. Sara.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be on the show. And it's also a pleasure of mine to be able to congratulate you on your 6th anniversary. So congratulations to all of you.
Sara, thank you for your wishes. And to start with our conversations, the theme of this year's International Day of World Indigenous Peoples reiterates the same theme of the Sustainable Development Goal, which is leaving no one behind. The leaving no one behind is one of the major agenda of UN. When talking about the indigenous peoples in Nepal, they are one of the social groups who are often left out, right? So how do such agendas of a sustainable development goal and what actions, in your opinion, really ensures that indigenous peoples who are not left out in these agendas and plans of actions?
So firstly, the Sustainable Development Goals are primarily enshrined for us to be able to work as countries around the world to ensure a more equitable attainment of results for people, that people will reach their fullest development potential at a more equitable level across the world. So the SDGs is not only for least developed countries, it's not only for developing countries, it's for all countries of the world to make sure that we have an equity lens. And because of that, there are 3 major universal values of the SDGs, which are the human rights-based approach, putting human rights at the center, leaving no one behind, and gender equality and gender empowerment. Those are the 3 universal values of the SDGs in Agenda 2030. And in so doing, the issue of indigenous peoples and in Nepal, indigenous nationalities, as I've been educated, are at the heart of the SDGs. And it goes without saying that indigenous nationalities in Nepal have been, and indigenous peoples around the world, over 370 million people around the world, have been the most marginalized from the lens of equity. And so leaving no one behind ensures that all people of the world, including indigenous people, can have their rights fulfilled.
So as you said that the indigenous peoples or indigenous nationalities in Nepal, they comprise 36% of the total 26 million population in Nepal, actually. As you said that the agenda is no one left behind, right? So one of the major demands that indigenous peoples are making is to include or ensure the meaningful participation in the decision-making level. So does a sustainable development goals or agendas ensure or include such priority?
Yes, it does. So the issue of the universal values are not just words. They are supposed to dictate and provide a steer for how we develop strategies and how we develop approaches to achieving the SDGs. So in terms of leaving no one behind, what that means is that there should be inclusion in terms of participation, consultations. We should have approaches that ensure that we have engagement with indigenous groups. And I think this is something that we as the United Nations in Nepal need to be moving towards, need to be working more towards. There have been programs designed around leaving no one behind, but how we specifically deal with indigenous nationalities, I think is an area we can strengthen, and it's something we look forward to as we renew our commitment on this day.
So it has already been 2 years that UN has been working with this global campaign of sustainable development goal. So in this regards, and could you just share some of the examples that UN is launching in order to bring the socially left out group in the mainstream?
The UN does a lot of work around inclusion, gender inclusion, LGBTIQ, different groups, and indigenous groups as well. So even in terms of COVID-19 right now, one of the things we're looking at is vaccine equity, even in Nepal. And so we have WHO and UNDP working on digitalization of pre-registration for vaccines to make sure that that we mitigate the risks of vaccines going to the wrong people and making sure we have vaccine equity. So that's an effort that's going on now, and it's going to go to those most marginalized provinces as well, making sure that vaccines reach to everybody in an equitable way. A lot of the work we do around the issue of access to health, access to education, all the work we do around labor migration and agriculture, food security and nutrition, there is a lens on the most marginalized. And the most marginalized from the perspective not only of access to services, but planning for services as well. Now, we're actually in a process of reviewing what we've done. We're evaluating our work over the last few years. And this will give us a lot of information to see where we have done well and where we may have a need to do better. And in terms of leaving no one behind, that's an agenda that we take to heart. And we know that the Constitution of Nepal carries that at the center, inclusion and the issue of proportional representation. And we want to make sure that the work we do in Nepal actually reflects that as well. And so as we continue to implement these programs across all the different sectors, we look to make sure we strengthen in the areas of reaching the most marginalized and reaching the indigenous nationalities, all 59 of them.
So as you brought really important issue, especially in regards to or in relation to COVID-19 pandemic, the access to health. And in this regard, when we talk about the indigenous peoples who speak their own indigenous language or mother tongue. So just I want to ask you that how important it is for indigenous peoples or marginalized communities who speak their own mother tongue, the access to information in their mother tongue. To what extent this access to information in mother tongue is important for you? Just to give you background is the COVID-19 pandemic, the information all were disseminated, one in English or in Nepali, and indigenous people who are actually living in a remote area, far-flung area, where there is not accessible of even the medium of information, right? So with that background, to what extent or how important it is for them to have access to information or even access to health, right, in their mother tongue.
This is very important because at the end of the day, access to services is determined not only by the supply or the provision of the services, it is also determined by the demand and the utilization of the services. So if you put all of the resources into providing the services and you do not have a demand for the services, or you do not have the utilization of the services, it's a wasted commodity. And so we balance out supply and demand. And you're right, in terms of access to information in languages that can be consumed by the most vulnerable. And if the leaving no one behind agenda must be implemented to the best of our ability, we have to go to that extent. In terms of risk communication and community engagement, materials have been translated into indigenous languages also. They're being continuously upgraded and updated. And I do not know for sure how many languages they are in, but that's work in progress. And we'll continue to do that. We'll continue to upgrade it. Because if everybody doesn't have the same information, we have information asymmetry. Some will have, some will not have. And then that undermines our efforts for ensuring equity. And so that's something we'll continue to work on. And I use this opportunity of today, this day that we all mark as the recognition of the over 370 million people around the world and the 59 nationalities in Nepal, to say that the UN further commits to ensuring that we will strengthen our efforts on leaving no one behind and strengthen our efforts on access to information, which is critical for access to services for the most marginalized.
So as we are doing our discussions based on the International Day of World Indigenous Peoples, so when talking about the theme of this year, one of the aspects of the theme of this year is the call for new social contract. The social contract is one of the old political theory or political philosophy. When talking about indigenous peoples, that they are demanding, as you said earlier, they are demanding for their meaningful participation or proportionate representation in the decision-making level, right? So even this, the social contract theory, which is the old philosophy, has been discussed in a new context. So new context in the sense that indigenous peoples are demanding to find some new solutions to include them in the decision-making level or in any sort of contracts or agreement that is affecting indigenous peoples. In that circumstances, what role the UN in Nepal actually are playing in partnership with the government of Nepal to ensure that systems as well as the structures which provide the inclusive outcomes for indigenous peoples or other marginalized groups.
So as you might be aware, UNESCO, ILO, UNDP have been engaging on works around indigenous peoples, indigenous nationalities in Nepal. And part of our role and our function in relation to ILO Convention 169 and other instruments of the United Nations that actually the rights of indigenous nationalities in Nepal. In relation to that, we have been doing a lot of work around advocacy. We have been engaging, and our role is to continue to ensure that we raise the issues around equity, the issues around meaningful participation, meaningful consultations, as ILO 169, the Convention 169 articulates, to ensure that there is substantive and meaningful consultation with indigenous nationalities, indigenous peoples. We are continuing to engage with government around that. We are continuing to provide our technical support and continuing to engage in these communities as well. And as you know, UNESCO does a lot of work around preserving the cultural heritage and so forth, and languages as well. And this is something that we'll continue to do. And as we review our engagement in Nepal, as we review the work we've been doing in Nepal, we'll continue to look at how we can strengthen and further engage beyond where we have in the past years.
So as you brought the issues in relation to Convention number 169, ILO Convention number 169. So in that regard, Nepal is one of the countries in Asia out of 24 countries around the world which have ratified ILO Convention 169. And Nepal actually has been champion in ratifying the ILO Convention number 169. But the fact is the implementation level seems slow. So in 2010, just to give you a background, that with the support from UN, the Nepal government actually had devised an action plan for the implementation of ILO Convention 169 as well. But that has never got approval even from the cabinet, right? In this regard, that is still in the way. In that context, how UN can play a role for the government of Nepal to facilitate, to pass that action plan to implement ILO Convention 169 properly?
Thank you for that point, and it's a very good point, and it's something we've identified as an area of advocacy to continue to engage government on the passing of the National Action Plan. And even prior to the recent changes we have had in administration, we were engaging with the Minister of Law on the issue of ILO 169 and consultation with indigenous nationalities, in particular areas that were being raised as concerns. So this is something that for us as a UN country team in Nepal, I speak for all of the members of the UN country team as the resident coordinator to say that we are all committed to continue that advocacy, and we use that ILO 169 as the entry point for some of the advocacy around these issues. And we'll continue to do so, because I think if we have the action plan agreed and we have the action plan passed, we can then together, along with other development partners, other donors put arms around the government to see how we can implement that plan to the betterment of the indigenous people of Nepal, the indigenous nationalities. So that's something that will continue to be high on our priority and continue to be a focus for us.
So UN being the club of the country or club of the states, obviously the UN works to strengthen the capacity of the state member states, right? So in that regard, obviously UN's role perhaps is to facilitate each and every government or nation state that they are accountable for and addressing the needs of various social groups within the states, right? In that context, how or what are the roles of UN actually focusing with Nepal? What can be the roles of UN to, in facilitations of the government to ensure that Nepal government is accountable for the socially excluded group?
So the way the UN works, we don't facilitate the government. What we do is we partner. We come in as a partner to the countries where we serve. We come in to support the people of the country, the government, the people of the country. So we work with the government to look at what the gaps are, to look at the issues. We look at an evidence base of what the issues are. We identify them. And then we formulate a strategy, and a partnership is articulated around those gaps. And we agree for a 5-year period or a 3-year period, whatever we agree the period will be, that these are the areas we'll work towards, and this is how we will work towards those areas. And sometimes we'll work through the government entity, sometimes we work through civil society, sometimes we work directly with the communities, depending on what the issues are. And then we then implement those programs. But they agree with government and based on government's priorities. Now, because government has prioritized socially excluded and marginalized groups, because the Constitution provides for inclusion and the Constitution provides for proportional representation, we work with government along those lines to make sure that the groups have been identified in the Constitution and in government's development plan. Right now, we're looking at the 15th development plan. There's plans to review that to develop the 16th development plan in a couple of years. And what we will be doing is working along with them to identify where we contribute, where we fit in to work with the country to address those needs.
So as you brought that, as UN partners with the government, each government, including as you are in Nepal, so UN actually partners with Nepal government. I understood that, and we understand that. And the UN has, one of the work of UN is to partner with each government or Nepal government in order to best implement the human rights instrument or human rights treaties that they are parties to, right? So periodically, as you said, the UN seems to be giving a recommendation as well for government of Nepal to fulfill the international law duty in good faith. So in that periodic recommendations that UN gives, and actually government of Nepal answers to that recommendation as well. So to what extent do you think the UN is, to what extent UN is satisfied in the implementation of human rights treaties that has been party so far, right? Party so far, especially concerning with the indigenous peoples, right? IILO Convention 169, including there is UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and so forth.
Well, what I would say is that we still have work to do. A lot has been done. Let's be honest about that. Nepal has ratified a lot of conventions, over 24. Yeah. Nepal has been very active in the global human rights platform. And Nepal has recently, July 8th, Nepal presented its Universal Periodic Review report. And of the 233 recommendations, Nepal adopted 196 of them. So the plan now is for us to support the government to develop an action plan for implementing all of those recommendations from the UPR. And I think this is where indigenous nationalities can see that there are some of the recommendations that factor indigenous nationalities, and we'll be working with the government to support them. And we've also offered already our technical support to say that we want to help the government to implement these recommendations, because in implementing these recommendations along the lines of human rights, it will also address many of the issues that have been raised from different communities.
we have been talking about the UN's partnership with the government of Nepal. And now I want to know what are the major priority programs of the UN in Nepal that actually best serve to the excluded communities or groups like indigenous peoples.
So we work across all 17 SDGs. And all of the programs along the lines of all of the SDGs, whether it's zero hunger, whether it's access to food, whether it's nutrition, it's health, all of the programs, protection, including our response to emergency and humanitarian crisis and so forth, all of them are the areas where we partner in Nepal. However, the way we partner, we do not partner in a way that's only addressing one group. We partner in a way that looks at national development and looks at ensuring that everybody is carried along. And the recent quest of Nepal to graduate from being a least developed country into a developing country has provided us an opportunity to develop a new approach, an opportunity to develop a transition plan from being a least developed country to a developing country. And this will give us an entry point to ensure that if there are any gaps in terms of indigenous people in the most marginalized, we can now use this opportunity, because Nepal will not have a shock responsive, irreversible graduation if the most marginalized are not carried along. If the rights of indigenous people are not factored, then Nepal will not be able to have a successful graduation. And so this is an opportunity for all of us to work together to ensure a shock responsive, irreversible graduation with all peoples of Nepal, including the indigenous nationalities, being part of that development transition.
So previously you said that UN is at the stage of reviewing what worked previously and what did not work, and in the phase of planning for the implementation of its work, right? As you said this. So does UN have any plans to partner also a group, well, let's say larger group of indigenous peoples? To give you the background about indigenous peoples, as I said, they represent 36%, which means almost 11 million population out of 26 million population of Nepal. They comprise really big group, right? So does UN have any plans to partner with indigenous peoples themselves to reach UN's work to the grassroots indigenous peoples?
So currently, as the UN works now, the UN is working with groups that reach indigenous people. That's a fact. If we do a disaggregation of the data of the reach of our work we have done, we have had impact on the lives of indigenous nationalities. Your question is whether or not we'll work directly with indigenous nationality groups and or NGOs or communities. And I think right now where we are in terms of reviewing our implementation, looking at our evaluation of our program, I think what we can say, what I can definitely say to you is that we want to work with every community in Nepal. We want to work with every group in Nepal. We want to work with those who are here to serve. And so this is an opportunity for us to look at how we've worked with indigenous nationalities and look at what needs to be strengthened and how we take that forward. So I see it as an opportunity for us to look at our results and look at how we achieve those results and look at how we can achieve them better.
So lastly, I would like to request you to give the best wishes on the occasion of the World Indigenous Peoples, wishes to the World Indigenous Peoples on the occasion of the International Day of World Indigenous Peoples, as well as the 6th anniversary of television.
Well, I will start with congratulating you all on this 6th anniversary. Fantastic, congratulations. Congratulations to you for the role that you're playing with the United Nations and the role you're going to be playing for Asia Pacific, representing indigenous people in this region. Congratulations to all of you who had the brainchild to actually formulate this and to put this together, and to all of the 59 indigenous nationalities of Nepal, all the people that comprise the indigenous nationalities, 36% of Nepal. I wish you a very wonderful World Indigenous People Day, and this is me saying to you as the UN Resident Coordinator in Nepal, we promise you that in the work we do, our commitment is that there will be no one left behind. And hold us accountable to that as we continue to look for new ways, better ways to partner and to deliver results for the people of Nepal. Dhanyabad.
Thank you so much, Sara, for your time and esteemed thought that you shared coming to the Indigenous Television, actually.
Thank you so much.
So we have come to the end of this show, and today actually we had a good discussions on the occasion of the International Day of World Indigenous Peoples, and we discussed actually on the theme of this year's World Indigenous Peoples Day, especially the theme, leaving no one behind, the indigenous peoples, and a call for a new social contract. So next week I will be coming up with a new guest to discuss a new theme. If you have any queries and feedbacks in regards to the program, you can reach me at indigenoustelevision@gmail.com. Till then, have a nice weekend. Bye-bye. Namaste.